friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Ellenboss, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today is going to be a little bit more of an off-the-cuff video, so I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see what comes of it. What I will say is that I am going to be sharing with you a few questions that were asked to me at a local talk that I did for the Minnetonka Gardening Club. They had some really smart questions, and I thought, why not just share those answers with you? Because maybe you have similar questions. Other things I wanted to do in this video is I wanted to share a beautiful poem that I found and also just kind of talk about what's been going on for me in my life. I might be very boring. I don't know. Maybe you have no interest, but I just thought, hey, I'll give you a little catch up on what's been going on in my life. So that's what we have on the docket for today. Before we go into today's content, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I can't believe it, guys. I am getting really close to 10,000 followers. And that was my goal last year. I really want to make it to 10,000 because it's just a huge milestone as a YouTube content creator. If you could just take a second and click the subscribe button, it will make my day and it will help more people to find me and to learn about the value of herbal medicine and the work of really honoring plants and their contributions to our world, not just in medicine, but also just of keeping this earth as a beautiful sanctuary. It is our only home. And I love teaching people about plants so that they can feel more committed and inspired to be good stewards of this earth. Okay. All right, folks, so this is what's been going on in my life as of recently. The number one thing has been my garden. I have been out in my garden a lot this summer, which has been such a joy. I have grown huge batches of blue vervain. If you want to see them, look at last week's video on how to make a blue vervain tincture. I show you this humongous batch. My daughter joins me to help me make a tincture. I also harvested a ton of holy basil and chamomile and spilanthes, which I grew for the first time, which is party in your mouth herb. Look it up if you don't know about spilanthes. And calendula, lavender. I made a rue tincture for some rue that my mom gave me from her garden back in Maryland. It's been a really busy summer. And of course, weeding. Weeding is real. And especially as we got into July and August, we had tons of rain, which meant a lot of growth, which meant a lot of weeds. So I've been really busy in the garden. I've also been working on my year 2 program. And for those of you who've known me for a while and have followed my work, when I ran my yoga studio in the DC area, we had our yoga teacher training courses, we had yoga classes and workshops. And I had the Herbal Apothecary that was located in the herb studio where I ran my herbal apprenticeships. And the year 1 course I've been running, I think since 2012. And that's a real good introduction to herbal medicine. What are herbs? How do we use them? What are plant energetics? How do we make simple tinctures? And the year 2 program was a clinical track where I was really walking through how to become a clinician, which is like how to sit with someone and how to really think through both on a physiological level, what's going on in their bodies, what's going on in their organ systems, what's going on emotionally for them, right? All of that. And then figuring out the herbs that are going to be most supportive. And even thinking about, which is more complicated, which is where do we start? Like which herbs do we give them first? And then where do we go long-term with them with trying to reach health goals? That was a huge endeavor and I loved it. It was a year-long course. We taught tongue diagnosis and pulse reading and custom formulation and the business of herbalism. And one thing that happened when I took my sabbatical or my time off of teaching, it was about 3 years I took after we closed the doors of our physical yoga studio location. And I started learning how to rest. I know that might sound weird to some of you, but I didn't know how to not work because I have always been a very active person. So I learned how to slow down and how to find leisure, how to rest. And during that time, I realized that, there are a lot of great clinical herb programs out there, and that I was feeling more called to bring people into a deeper study of herbs. And there's tons of herb schools out there that have really deep introspective programs. And there's a lot that focus mostly on symptoms, herbal formulations, and efficacy in the clinic. And I realized what one of my unique offerings as a clinician, I think, I could be totally wrong, but I feel that I have a skill of being able to really listen for patterns in what a person is saying and connect that to patterns that I have observed in plants. And based on my knowledge of the plants and their actions, their qualities, their chemistry, their growing patterns, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, matching that with the client and getting being pretty accurate and having pretty good results with being able to make that connection for people on an individual basis of here are the patterns that you're working with. And let me tell you some stories about plants that I think will support you in this journey. And let's create a cohesive plan to help you take baby steps out of the current pattern and into a new way of living. And I realized I want to teach people more about that process. And this involves more introspection, the ability to be still with oneself. It requires the patience that one needs in order to really think big picture and not just textbook, like like this symptom equals that herb, but to really think about larger patterns in people, in nature, and in plants. And I love teaching that to people. And that's a very sensory type of learning. And I redesigned the year 2 program to be more comprehensive in giving people that wider lens view of the world we live in and the nature of reality. And I think part of this comes from a lot of work that I did in my younger years with entheogenic plants and entheogenic medicines. And I, started working with psychedelics when I was a teenager and always felt a reverence. Like, even though sometimes I did it in social settings, my experience of psychedelic medicines was always that of I'm getting a glimpse into a different reality that feels a little bit closer to the reality of spirit or God or the larger cosmos. And I get that flavor of herbalism is not for everyone. Totally get it. No big deal. But there are a lot of people out there that are like me who perceive the world as less than just material, that perceive the world as made of spiritual matter, if that makes sense, of energies, of patterns, of feelings and nuance that when we make these shifts can really lead to profound changes in our lives. And so I wanted to find those people who think like that and who are willing to step into the unknown in some ways and try new practices and patterns and see if these ways of thinking and working with plants might help them. And therefore, they might be able to start working with these plants and help others. Now, I am not talking about giving people entheogens or giving people psychedelics or working with psychedelics. I'm talking about working with just plants because every plant has consciousness. And when we tap into that consciousness, it can open us up. So we don't need LSD. We don't need DMT. We don't need ayahuasca or mushrooms. to study plants in this way. We can go right to the plants, but with an altered perception of reality, we can go into the plants and study them in this way. So if you're still with me, then you get it, right? But what I wanted to do was create a program that gives people a chance to study plants in a way that is really personal, and at the same time opens them confidently to be able to work with other people to make that connection for them. And this is the way I think it really does work. At least all of the teachers who I've been really influenced by are people who've done the work, who made changes, saw the results, and then taught what they learned through from their experience to others. Those are my teachers. And have been I have such deep gratitude for that style of learning. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to go to that level with people and give them this experience that they can touch other people, and we can just, start tapping each other, waking each other up to working with plants in this way. And so in the year 2 course, there's 3 major paths of study, or I would say they're kind of like 3 main hubs of study in the year 2 program. One is that clinical hub, we could say, where we're learning about patterns in people and matching them to patterns in plants. The second hub is medicine making. How do we make really good medicine? How do we harvest, connect, and how do we make medicine that is infused with our intentionality, that is made with pure intentions, with clean tools? How do we make medicine that is more than just an extract? And then the third topic, or the third hub, is community. How do we start to build bridges with people who live in our neighborhood around plants? There's some great books that I'm going to have students read about how do we build conscious community, and how do we start to think bigger outside of our own little home and our own little house into larger networks of thinking. So we can start to build networks of people communicating together and using medicine and food as a way to create more cohesion and healing in our own local communities. So those are the 3 main areas that we will cover. And then people on their own get to choose which one they want to focus on. What are they most interested? Are they most interested in that one-to-one healing relationship and working with other people one-on-one? Are they interested in the process of making those medicines and maybe selling them eventually on, at a farmer's market or in an herb shop or on a website? And what are the steps to do that and be compliant with FDA and GMP regulations? And then the third one is there might be people that are like, I just want to be in a community and I don't know how to do that. I live way out here, or I live in the city, and I want to create something that's a little bit different than what already exists. And so we'll talk about how do you do that? And that might be their project. So within those 3, people will find the one that stands out the most that they want to work on. And they're going to learn about all 3, but they'll choose the one that they really want to focus on for their final project and then create a project on that. And I love that. I'm really excited about that. And then throughout the whole program, students will be creating custom blends for themselves based on questions that I'm going to ask of them. So I'm going to have them really focus and meditate on certain topics, sit with them, study the plants, research, and then write up a formula. That formula will be passed through myself and my teacher assistant, Janelle. And then we will, give any suggestions, maybe make some tweaks to the formula. Then you'll make it and start taking it, and then you'll journal your results. And this is where the rubber meets the road. All of this is like practical, hands-on ways of working with plants that is going to really change your life. And it sounds so cliche, but it really does. This is how change happens. This is how life changes happen. They happen when you say, yes, I'm going to do this. You follow through and you have support, because most of us can't do this kind of stuff alone. So you'll have a community, you'll have me, you'll have Janelle and your classmates to really support you through this transformational journey. I'm going to hop over to the website so you can see where all of this information is stored. Go to skyhouseherbs.com and click on second year and scroll down. You will see more information about this course. It is designed for intermediate level students who have either completed the Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship at Sky House or a comparable course elsewhere. You should have a working knowledge of at least 25 plants, an understanding of key plant actions and organ affinities, a basic understanding of Western plant energetics, a basic understanding of plant signatures. It is also helpful to have a background study in human physiology. These are your areas of emphasis: custom formulation, product design, clinical skills, and health coaching, and community herbalism and teaching. If you want to learn more, have a look at the structure. The course calendar is now posted, so it says coming soon, but these are actually live. We're going to add these to the website before this video is launched. You can check back on the website. All of that will be there. And if you're ready to enroll, you can click here on sign up. One payment of $12.99. If you click on 12 payments, you can pay $120 for 12 months. Then the need-based pricing, if you want to apply for need-based tuition, click on this button and you can fill out this application and talk about what best describes your situation. And then you will next view the pricing and see what your different pricing options are, which include full payments or monthly payment plans. I hope that gives you an idea of the year 2 course and what I've been working on and why that has been such an important thing to me. What else can I say? Okay, I want to share with you a poem, and this is somebody I just came across. I started looking at poems about fullness and abundance and patience, and I came across this from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a 20th century French Jesuit priest, paleontologist, geologist, and philosopher who attempted to synthesize scientific concepts of evolution with his Christian theology. His writings really touch upon this idea of a spiritual unity with the creator and with the cosmos, but also one of conscious connection between plants and nature. Now I want to read this poem to you, and this is called Patient Trust. Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And yet it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on as though you could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of you tomorrow. Only God could say what this new spirit, gradually forming within you, will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that his hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete. I just love that. So I feel like this season of fullness at the end of summer, as we're moving into autumn, this poem just feels like it's like a ripe cherry or peach, where it's like all the fullness of what we're feeling and all this anticipation and what's going to be next and what's this next thing. This poem is just like, it's okay. Like have patience, have faith. There is a hand larger than your own guiding the work. And so don't try to be somewhere where you're not. So anyway, I thought you might enjoy that poem as well. Okay, the questions that were asked at the recent Minnetonka Garden Club meeting. The first one was, we sampled nettles. So I had everyone take a sip of nettle tea that I brewed. And one woman said, how is it this plant that stings me when I garden and creates welts and hives on my skin, can be used to treat skin conditions, and can be used to help with skin irritation. And I was like, that is such a good question. And so many people have that question. It's like, why would I take that dangerous, spiky, stinging plant into my body? And so I explained to her, I said, nettles, stinging nettles, have these little needles that are filled with formic acid. And that formic acid is the same compound that's found in fire ants. And so when you get bit by a fire ant and you get that burn, that's actually the same compound as we find in stinging nettles. But what happens is when we dry the nettles, those little needles actually, they break apart and the formic acid degrades. So it's no longer there to sting us. But what is in the leaves is a compound called quercetin. Quercetin is a naturally occurring flavonoid found in nettle. And what quercetin is it's a very, very strong antihistamine. So when we brew it as a tea, that pigment comes out, that flavonoid comes out into the tea. And when we drink that quercetin, it's very strongly anti-inflammatory. So we get that breaking down of histamine in our body. So a lot of times when we get allergies, we're basically having a allergic response to the pollen or whatever's in the air. When we take in quercetin, which acts as an antihistamine, it starts to put a damper on that allergic response from our immune system. And so we don't have that flare up. So that's how it works. And I was telling her, it's so interesting that in nature, in the doctrine of signatures, which is something that the ancient Greek and even Egyptians took note of, is that a lot of plants, what they show us in their signatures, that is their shape, the things that they do, the ways they grow, the places they grow, can give us hints into their medicine. It's sort of like their own secret code. It's like their own secret language. And the doctrine of signatures is such a great way of understanding herbs. So we have this herb, for example, like nettle with a sting. But yet, what that sting is showing us is that actually this plant is a really good medicine when prepared properly for inflammation, irritation of the skin, specifically things like eczema and psoriasis, which I use dried nettle tea for all the time internally. And so you can drink it as a tea, and it's really good at helping the body detoxify and helping with any sort of irritation, inflammation, and allergy. It's pretty amazing. Another question that was asked was a woman asked about herbs and drug interactions. And this is one that comes up a lot. People wonder, I'm taking these medications, are herbs safe? And so this is a question I love to answer because most of the time herbs are absolutely safe. It is very rare that we have a drug herb interaction with most herbs, okay? However, there are a certain few number of herbs which tend to have more interactions with medications, and that can either sensitize a person to the medication in their body or can actually clear the medication from the body, which can lead to the symptoms that they were trying to negate in the first place. I always caution people with a few herbs. That includes St. John's wort, and licorice are really my top two herbs that I say to most people, if you're considering taking these two herbs, do make sure that they don't interact with any medications you're taking. However, on a whole, I will say that most herbs are more food-like than they are drug-like. And I give the example of ginger. Ginger has 744 active compounds that we know of. There are probably more compounds in ginger that we haven't discovered yet, but there are 744 that we know about, and they all interact together within the plant. And that's how the plant is able to live, is it's figured out a way for all of these compounds to live harmoniously within its plant body. And this buffers some of the reactions our bodies might have. So if you have something that's like very, very caustic and maybe burning to the tissues of the body, well, in ginger, there's another compound that is going to negate that. Whereas if we have a pharmaceutical drug, it is one compound that has one mechanism and it has, one particular action. And typically, the FDA does a decent job at making sure that they do lots of trials and runs and tests to make sure that it is indeed safe in the body. But there is definitely more reactivity to pharmaceutical drugs than there are to plants, because plants, again, there's a lot more buffering that's happening in the plants and all of those compounds than there is in one single compound left alone, which is why personally, as an herbalist, I prefer to use whole plant medicines rather than single plant extracts. Like, for example, you can take the hypericin out of St. John's wort and use that like a drug, basically, or you can take the whole plant of St. John's wort, which has hundreds of other compounds in it too. And they are different medicines. So a standardized extract is not the same as a whole plant medicine. And that's important because some clinical trials that are done on single extracts will have more side effects than when using the whole plant. That being said, my response to her was, if you're taking any pharmaceutical, look it up. There's some really great resources out there. I'll include some links in the description below of places where you can look up drug herb interactions. So do look it up. And don't be afraid was my final answer for her. The last question was another really good one. So these were women who were part of a gardening club. So one woman asked, we were talking about bee balm, for example, and she said, can I use an ornamental variety of bee balm? Is it the same as the Monarda fistulosa, which is the native species? And I said, sometimes the ornamental species are very similar in their actions, but most of the time, once they've been hybridized a number of generations, one of the things they tend to really change with is their volatile oil content. So for example, with Monardas, your Monarda fistulosa, your native bee balm, is going to have a much stronger volatile oil content in the leaves and in the flowers than your hybridized magenta. The magenta ones are beautiful. They have great flowers. They're still good for pollinators. But if you crush up the leaves and smell it, it doesn't have the same aromatics. So it's generally speaking, a weaker medicine. So you do want to double check in your references if you have a hybridized species of some medicinal plant. Just double check. But my rule of thumb is typically I stay away from them. Typically, I always go towards the specific species that has been used historically when I'm using herbal medicines. So those are the 3 questions. Otherwise, this summer, I've been laying out which has been really nice, trying to find moments to just lay in the sun because I just love the sun. So I've just been trying to get my tan on, trying to absorb the sun as much as possible. I took my first long bike ride. I don't even know how many miles I went, but I just got on my bike and I just kept going. And I was like, I'm not going to stop until I figure out where I am. And it was kind of fun because I didn't know where I was for a long time. And then finally I ended up in Excelsior and I was like, whoa, that was really far. But it was just so nice to have the wind on my skin and in my hair and the sun and the smell of the water and all the woods. And so that was probably one of my highlights of the summer, was that bike ride I took last week. And I'm really looking forward to the fall. I think the fall is one of my favorite seasons. It's going to be super cozy. I love drinking chai tea and curling up on my couch with books and taking walks and watching the leaves change and doing arts and crafts activities with my girls and doing chalk art on the sidewalk and on our driveway and hot cocoa at the local cafe. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And getting back into my art, I kind of stopped painting over the summer. I just was so busy with the garden. So this fall, I'm going to get back into painting. Stay tuned. I'll let you know how that goes. Well, that's what we have for today. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I hope to hang out with you again. I did a live talk on Saturday where I just opened it up for an hour to talk about a topic and then have you all be able to answer your questions. So if you missed the live talk on Saturday, please write in the comment section if you'd like for me to do another YouTube live where I just kind of show up and we can hang out live together and talk about life and herbs and whatever it is that is on our hearts and on our minds. And I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.